Braden, I believe it took you 10 years to get your first screenwriting credit. I'm wondering if we can go back to the beginning.
Sure. Yeah, I was close to graduating high school. And so during high school, like growing up, all I wanted to be was an artist. And so I was drawing obsessively. And high school, I had this insight that I was a mediocre artist at best. And so, but through that was really a love of storytelling and filmmaking. And so I was really drawing, but trying to draw stories. And so it wasn't until I got out of high school and found my way through community college, College of the Canyons, and stumbled into a film production 101 class that cemented it for me. It was all about screenwriting and filmmaking, and I did not have the grades to go to a typical kind of university, but that community college experience helped me find what I wanted to do, which was tell stories through writing instead of drawing.
And sometimes I feel like community colleges get a bad rap, especially in areas where there are these like prestigious schools. But having gone to a community college myself, I loved it, and I felt like you get more individual attention.
I think so. I think you have time to find yourself, find what you like, however you want to describe it. But because it's way less expensive than a typical university, so you have time to wander a bit. And so I stumbled into classes taught by filmmaker Mike Ott and screenwriter Ron Mita, and these were professors that I still am in contact with. I'm still count as mentors, and that all happened at a community college. So not a typical college that you'd expect, but you're given time to find it.
And it's come full circle because you've been able to interview them on your Story Series podcast.
Yes, that was surreal and really humbling and just a wonderful opportunity to bring the mentors in and say, hey, I'm a little further along than I was in community college. Let's talk about their experience, and yeah, it was quite special.
What kind of screenplays were you writing your first 5 years as a quote-unquote amateur screenwriter?
Ooh, almost one of every genre. So my first feature spec screenplay was a horror film. It was like set in a snowy Los Angeles about this. It was almost like the Anthony Hopkins movie Slipstream about this aging screenwriter who starts to go crazy. Came out at around like a year or two after I had written the spec, and it's not connected in any way, but it had a similar kind of vibe. And so I always remember that time period. Romantic comedy, historical boxing epic, raunchy comedy. It was very much trying to find what I like to write, and so it was just try one of each kind of genre.
But these were not in the animation these weren't set in an animation world?
No, not at all. It was, in college you're taught whatever's hot at the time, and it was films. Nowadays, probably TV. And because that's kind of where the golden age is happening in television. But back then it was just studying filmmaking and then just kind of writing what I liked and what I saw.
Right. And yeah. Blockbuster was still around then?
Blockbuster was still around, yeah. You could go out and rent a movie and watch it, and Netflix was still a DVD company, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What changed about your writing or your writing process that made you go from aspiring screenwriter to professional screenwriter?
Part of that was what I was exposed to. So jumping ahead a little bit to, you alluded to that 10-year mark of when I finally became a quote-unquote professional screenwriter. My first credit was on an animated show called Stretch Armstrong. It was a 22-minute animated series, 6 to 11 kind of demographic. And what changed was I was exposed to it. So I had in my kind of arsenal, my portfolio, all these feature specs, but I ended up getting a temp job at Hasbro Studios. And I was just everybody's assistant, kind of going all around the company all day and delivering mail and whatever needed to be done. And then the production floor, the second floor, let me know that there was this show that got greenlit called Stretch Armstrong. It was Netflix and Hasbro were making it together, and they knew I wanted to write, the people at the company, and they said, this is your shot, go interview. And I thought, oh, okay, animation. Like, I loved animation growing up. It was really formidable for me as a kid, but I never went back to it professionally because I couldn't draw, so that was kind of off the table. And so I didn't kind of connect, and in college you're not really taught you're not really introduced to writing for animation, it's not really a thing. And so I interviewed and read the pilot script of this show that they were making, and it was so good that I thought, if this is animation, this different kind of writing, I'm in. I want to get close to it. I want to get in it. And so what changed was just being exposed to it and loving it.
Well, you loved comics as a kid, is that right?
Yeah, comics. I mean, Rocko's Modern Life was a big influence on me as like a '90s Nickelodeon kid, and so that was big. And specifically in Rocko's Modern Life, they would show the making of the show during the commercial breaks. So you get to see the creator Joe Murray in his studio surrounded by drawings, and that's where I was like, I want to draw, I want to do that. But it was really storyteller, but you just, the drawing was how it came out for many years, and so that was the thing, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the Charles Schultz documentary about the Peanuts.
Mm-mm.
Okay, it's excellent. And so he kind of just said when he's at that drawing table, like he feels so powerful because he can orchestrate this world and that he doesn't feel anywhere else. So yeah.
Yeah. There's a magic to it. It transports you, absolutely.
When did you realize that animation could be your path into the business?
That first show, Stretch Armstrong. First, I was lucky enough that a large part of the production was still being done at the studio, so I got to see storyboard artists take the scripts that were being written over here and storyboard them over here. I started as a script coordinator, and so I got to go to records and see the actors recording the lines that were boarded here, written here, and so I got to see this. I like to say Stretch Armstrong was my animation school, and so I got to see the pipeline, and I just loved it. And because I was working as an entry level on the show script coordinator, I was at least getting paid. And so then halfway through that first season, the head writers were gracious enough to say, hey, we're gonna give you a script. This is your shot. And that was my first professional credited script. And I was so ready for it because I knew the show really well, and I loved the process, and it was hard, but it was engaging, and so I thought, how can I do more of this? And so you never know if it's your real path in the industry, but you hope it is, and so that was the hope. I could see it now through animation.
So you grew up not too far from Hollywood, quote unquote, Burbank, these studios, but did you know anyone in the business? Was your family in the business?
No. I hesitated for a second because I later found out that one of my mom's brothers, he's an uncle, was an uncle of mine, and he wanted to be a screenwriter. And he wrote some scripts, and he went to CSUN, and he wrote query letters and would send his query letters out to agents, managers, production companies to get his stuff read. And he also had personal struggles, and he's not here anymore. And so I only knew him a little bit as a kid, just first couple years of my life, so I don't really have any memories of him. But it wasn't until I told my parents, hey, I want to study screenwriting, that my mom kind of slowly opened up and said, your Uncle John was a writer. And so she gave me a script that he wrote on like this kind of blue folder with brads in it, which we don't really use anymore. It's all PDFs now. And so it's a physical script set in the 80s, which was modern when he wrote it, about like, it's kind of a 80s modern detective story, kind of a throwback to the Raymond Chandler kind of stuff set in Northridge, California. And there's some of his query letters in there still. And I got to see his writing style, which was like kind of dark comedy, and there's a real connection that I see in what I see that he's written in me, which was really interesting. So that was where he took that, and other circumstances in his life prevented him from kind of going all the way. But so did I have anyone? No, but there was a connection to someone in my family who did want to go down that path, and so yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and you had talked about it on another podcast. That because we always hear, well, you have to have somebody, hey, maybe make a couple calls for Brandon, and we'll get him in there. But it sounds like you started, delivering mail, getting coffee, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. It was. I studied overseas for almost 2 years, and when I came back, I was applying all over. I was like, I'm ready to get into an entry-level, kind of anywhere, production company, just to get my foot in the door. And I wasn't getting any bites for like 6 months. And then in Santa Clarita, which is where I was living, I found a temp agency. And I called them up and I said, here's what I'm looking for. And they said, well, we don't really have entertainment companies, but sometimes. And I said, well, that's better than like 6 months of nothing. So like sometimes, I'll take sometimes. So I signed up with them, you take a computer test, all that stuff. And then the next day they said, we have a company called Hasbro. And I said, oh, I've heard of that. They make movies and they had toys. And I'm like, yeah. So they set me up with an interview. I think it was on a Tuesday. I interviewed at Hasbro. As soon as I walked into their studio in Burbank, I was like, I had a good feeling. I was like, I think I'm gonna get it. I like this. And on my way home, I was calling the temp agency to let them know how the interview went. I couldn't get through. Then they called me back and they said, hey, yeah, that was Hasbro on the other line. They want you to start tomorrow.
Wow, that's
and
awesome.
I thought, oh, okay, this is it. So this is how I can grow. And so that was really like the kind of the first big break was there.
Okay, so that kind of dispels the myth that it has to be people that you know. So
if it's not people you know, then it's a numbers game, and you just gotta. If this doesn't work, try this. If this doesn't work, try this. It's a series of that kind of thinking. Yeah. So if submitting your resume doesn't work, how about a temp agency? How can I increase my chances? It's like whatever you can do.
When you found your uncle's query letters, did it kind of validate even? Maybe looking back on it even now, because you've had more time since you probably saw those, did it validate your journey? Did you realize like how difficult this is, but how grateful you are for being part of it?
Yeah, made me wish I knew him better and I could talk writing with him, and glad that I no longer drink. Because that was something that he went through was addiction, and so it was like that. This is no joke. Like if you don't, take care of other things in your life, that's gonna become a problem. And so it's also a look at what can happen if you don't address certain things. But mostly, I just wish I could talk writing with him. Yeah.
Well, maybe in some ways he's writing through you. You never know.
Yeah. I do want to now go back to that script and reread it now as someone who's now with years of kind of working professionally behind me, like let me go back to his script and give it another look and just see what I feel. And but I have it. It's in my kind of like cabinet at home. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Mental health in this industry is not always talked about. It seems like now people are definitely talking about it more and more. But yeah, it's definitely not an easy thing to have a stable life doing this.
Yeah, it's a very unstable kind of life. As we talked about, you have to be good at waiting, and waiting can lead to all sorts of things. And it's like you have to wait in a healthy way, right? Like there's ways to take your mind off it. There's ways to cope and kind of self-medicate, quote unquote, like in all kinds of ways that are healthy and not. So you have to be aware of that because this is a long game. Like it is a long game. And so that any sort of addiction like that is not play well in a long game. And so it's like just like keep that in mind too, because it really, it's a long game. Like that's just got to look at it that way.
And also too, people won't always tell you why certain things happen, why you weren't chosen, why you were being let go, whatever it is, and allowing that to, no one can really be at peace with that, but finding a way to cope with that.
Yeah, that's a great point because not all no's are equal, and you don't always have the backstory or the context of why they said no. But it's just thank you, we really enjoyed it. Next, that's kind of, and you don't know, and so you can't put your whole identity on it because then you're outsourcing your validation to other people, and so which is going to look like this up and down, and so you have to be careful. Yeah, it's not a sustainable way to do it.
Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. Here is a complimentary question from our book Story Questions.